This video covers section 2.6 and it's number 18 on your My Math homework. There's one rule that you need to remember. We're going to solve these just like we did when we solved linear equations, and we're going to move variables to one side or constants to the other side. But anytime you multiply or divide by a negative, you're going to flip your inequality sign. You're going to change the direction. Alright, let's look at problem number 1. This is a linear inequality, so I'm going to move my variables to one side, my constants to the other side. I'm going to combine like terms, and I get x greater than 10. I didn't multiply or divide by a negative. Now what we want to do is three things. This is my inequality answer. In some of these, they'll ask you to sketch this. Now, if this says x is greater than 10 on a number line, this is going to the right. Because there's no equal, I'm going to use a parentheses. Now, we also, on some of these, will be asked to use interval notation. And interval notation is exactly what this little block looks like. In other words, the lowest is 10 with a parentheses, and the greatest would go to infinity, which always has a parentheses. This is inequality, graphing, and interval notation. Okay, let's look at problem number 2. I'm going to move my variables all to one side, constants to the other. 2 minus 5 minus 8 would give me a negative 11y, and 2 minus 8 minus 16 would give me negative 22. Now I'm dividing by negative 11. It doesn't matter what my answer is. It's because I am dividing by a negative that this sign is going to flip. Now this divides and leaves me y. 2 negatives divides and leaves me a positive 2. Now that's inequality. If we want to graph that, this is every number that's less than or equal to 2. Now less than is to the left. Equal to, we put a bracket. Then if we want inequality, you're going to draw a little mini picture of what this looks like, and it would go from negative infinity to 2 with a bracket. Now you'll have sometimes what they call compound inequalities. This is an AND statement, sometimes because you see the x nested between two amounts, a low and a high amount. This is an OR statement, always in two separate problems, and we'll work them as two separate. The goal in this AND problem is to get this x by itself. So if you were looking at this problem, 5x plus 1 less than, you would want to move the 1. So what I'm going to do is subtract a 1, but now I have to do that in all three places. So now I have negative 4 less than 5x less than or equal to 2. Now remember, I want x by itself, so I'm going to divide by 5, but I have to do that in all three places. So negative 4x less than x less than or equal to 2 fifths. Now that's your inequality answer. If I drew that on a number line, I might have a negative 1, let's say a 0, and a positive 1. Well, negative 4 fifths would be before you get to negative 1. 2 fifths would be just above 0. And this is saying that my x's, my answers, are between those two. So I'm going to shade between. There's no equal sign on the left, so that has a parentheses. There's an equal on the right, it has a bracket. Now what you need to do now is draw a little picture of this shaded area. So it would go from 4 fifths on the left, and that's a negative, to 2 fifths on the right, inclusive, with a bracket. If you have an OR problem, this is so easy because you really are going to work one problem, and then you're going to work a second problem and separate with the word OR. So first I'll have 3x plus 1 less than negative 5. I'm going to move the 1 over, becomes negative 1. So 3x less than negative 6. I'm going to divide by 3. Now you divided by a positive 3, so the sign does not change. Now on the other side, every time I'm going to have OR, I'm first going to move the 3. Then I'm going to simplify. 4 minus 3 is 1. Then I'm going to divide by 2. So x is greater than or equal to 1/2. Now here are my answers as they appear in inequality notation. Now to graph this, I could have a -2, let's say a -1, a 0, and a 1. Now positive 1/2 is going to be right over in this area. Now this says x is less than -2. That would be to the left. Does not have an equal, so that would be a parentheses. X is greater than 1/2, and it does have an equal, so that would have a bracket. That's my graphing. Now if I want an inequality, an interval picture of that, I need this identified and this identified, the two shaded areas. So that would be -infinity up to -2 with a parenthesis, combined with 1/2 with a bracket to positive infinity. Again, section 2.6, Inequalities, number 18.